Welcome back to the InfoWars Nightly News. Owen Schroyer, joined by the Citizens for Trump Special Projects Director, Jack Posobiec. Jack, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on, Owen. It's great to be here.
Well, you have recently put out on your Twitter some of the Trump internal polling, and you sent these to me. There's 6 different polls that you guys are analyzing from different sides, different angles. Just as an overall perspective, what do these internal polls mean to you?
So what we're tracking on this, and I was actually given authorization by General Michael Flynn, to release these to the public. What we're tracking is essentially not so much as the mainstream media would like you to have it as, you know, a horse race, who's ahead per day. We're actually forecasting forward who is going to win on election day, because as we all know, that's the only day that actually matters in this. And as this is forecasting, we're seeing that Hillary has launched her operation, her smear campaign that's being run by David Brock, way too early. She had a spike in support, and Trump had a drop in support, but it's already being reversed because it was too fast. Whereas Trump's support is very steady, Clinton's spike is up and it's gone. We're seeing resistance lines, basically a bottom of support for Trump that is going to reach up, and we're seeing a ceiling in terms of support for Clinton. So her support can only go so high, but Trump's is getting higher and higher as every day goes by. And it looks that by election day, his support will be much higher than hers.
And that's actually a good point you make. When you look at these polls, it does seem like most of them are trending in the direction that you just indicated. But it is a day-by-day basis, and it's interesting to see on Election Day how it will be. I think the one poll that indicates what you're talking about is the both campaigns predicted winner campaigns, where you see it going up and down, and it always depends on the media narrative that day. What have you found looking at these?
So the way we've seen it is things are close out there, because what you have is a situation where half the country is listening to the mainstream media and half of the country is listening to social media, new media, other sources. And so because it's so close that it's like, I've described it as sword fighting on a tightrope, like the old Errol Flynn movies. Any one difference for either campaign, any hit, any allegation, it's swinging it back and forth. So that amount of volatility isn't something that's usually seen in campaigns. But some analysis that we've done today, Paul Joseph Watson actually did some great analysis, that more Americans are focused on WikiLeaks, more Americans are focused on the actual scandals that have come out, rather than any of these media allegations that they seem to be drubbing out all of a sudden here in mid-October.
Let's talk about the intention to vote. One of the internal polls was measuring intention to vote. It looks like in this campaign, the intention from Trump supporters to vote is just getting more extreme. Like the more negatives that we see coming against Trump, the more fired up we get to go vote from him. Is that what you're seeing?
That's exactly correct. What they don't understand about Trump supporters is that Trump supporters, as we found all through this election, and we saw it through the primaries, that the more you push back on Trump supporters, the more supporters he actually gets, and the more it actually galvanizes their support. They've tried very hard to use wedge issues, to use demoralization, to use pretty much every tactic, every Alinsky tactic, every Leninist tactic that they can think of to break apart the Trump coalition. But they're not able to do it because they've rallied around something that's bigger than simply Donald Trump himself, and that's the idea of taking America back from this global elite.
And you mentioned the Saul Alinsky tactic, that one of those tactics is getting out in front of your opponent on an attack that's going to be levied against you, such as Bill Clinton's rapes, and now all these women coming forward saying Donald Trump sexually assaulted them. But I think that, like you said, the more negatives we see, the more fired up we want Donald Trump to be president, because we don't like the mainstream media. We know that there are enemies, so whatever they're pro, we're basically the anti of whatever they're throwing out there at us. And I think that the internal polling is showing that. Let's talk about the African-American internal polling. It does look like Trump is actually gaining support there, even though it's still very low.
That's actually right. And there's been a lot of factors working towards that. The revelation of Bill Clinton's illegitimate son, Danny Williams, who was banished, coming forward and revealing himself to the world, the fact that he's Black American, the fact that Trump's performance in the debates has been getting exponentially better as debates go forward. That's been very very helpful. And we're seeing more and more that Hillary Clinton's statements in the past, such as the African Americans referring to them as super predators, is coming out and is getting into the mainstream, mostly because people are going and telling people, even at Democrat events, that about these comments, as well as the comments about rape. And so while the Democrats, their coalition has been based around the Barack Obama vote, it's showing that African Americans are not supportive of Hillary Clinton the way they were of Barack Obama. And that was a faulty miscalculation on their part.
Yeah, a miscalculation that they honestly can't afford at this point, and I think that that's why they're trying to force the illegal immigrants into this election for a voter block. Let's talk about what we found with the internal polling on women. Now, there was a great point made in the email. Who wants America to be secure? That's women. That's usually one of the biggest things people think about when they actually are in the booth about to vote is who is going to provide me the most safety. Just like we saw with the intention to vote, that women are polling stronger with Trump since the mainstream media's attacks have gotten stronger.
That's exactly right. And because women are looking at the situation out there, and if you remember, Mr. Trump has actually been very clever in the way he's rolled this out from day one. In his very first speech, a lot of people overlook this fact, but when he talked about building the wall and when he talked about illegals coming into the U.S., he mentioned very specifically rapists. And this was done because that is a protection of women statement. Mr. Trump, Donald Trump, is the women's protection candidate. He will secure not only our society, but provide law and order for our cities, for our neighborhoods, for our suburbs, our inner cities, you name it. This is something that strikes home with a lot of women. And in fact, there's a line I was saying yesterday that the mainstream media is pushing so hard to tell women that they have to vote for Hillary Clinton. And I don't know about you, man, but in my experience, when you tell a woman what she should do, that's a great way to get her to do the opposite.
You know, I don't know. I think that maybe it's a more powerful thing with women, but I'm the same way. I've always been, you tell me what to do. You can ask my parents. I typically want to do the exact opposite, or my teachers. But tell me, you know, because we see all of these polls on television saying Clinton's winning, Clinton winning. You know, apparently she's been dominating this whole time. Tell me, why do we trust these polls? Not just because they're, you know, aggregating to the future, but as a more accurate measurement of the on the now basis. Why are these polls more accurate, do you think, than what we see on CNN or any of the other mainstreams?
One of the main reasons is because these voters were carefully selected and scientifically chosen to represent different parts of the country and different demographics of the country at the beginning of the election. They use a much wider sample size, 3,000, versus the 200 or so I've seen in some of these mainstream media polls. And these polls are based on the exact same group of voters that have been going since the very first onset of the general election. So it's the same group of people. You know,
it was early in this election cycle. Donald Trump said he could, I don't remember the exact quote, but shoot someone in the middle of Times Square and still do well in the polls. I think that we can now actually see this in the polls. In fact, he might actually raise in the polls if he did that. I'm being facetious, but really we're seeing the backlash of the mainstream narrative in these polls.
And it certainly depends on who it is. There was a story where Donald Trump actually saw someone getting mugged in Times Square once, had the car stopped and ran after and chased the guy, and then the guy dropped the lady's purse and ran off. So Trump has shown that he's the kind of guy that, yeah, we know that he's brash and we know that he's not politically correct, but people like the guy, and they know that when he's fighting, he's going to fight for America just as hard.
Well, Jack, you've got a new report you were telling me about off air that we're not going to get in too much now, but just tease the audience a little bit on this next breaking report you're going to have.
So I basically infiltrated a World Bank summit earlier today. And I spent some time just kind of sitting in the back and listening to these people talk. And they're talking about how they want to set up the new world order. And that's what they refer to it as, the international world order. And they're talking about taking countries that don't play along and what they're going to do to coerce them or potentially look at regime change in specific areas around the country. So I'm putting that report together as we speak.
Well, Jack, thank you so much. We're going to make sure that they don't steal this election from Donald Trump. I propose that everyone voting for Donald Trump wears red on Election Day. That might be an easy way to fight this legally. What do you think about that?
So Citizens for Trump, we're actually partnering with Roger Stone on this. We're working with his Stop the Steal organization. If you go to stopthesteal.org, you can look at it. We're devising a sort of exit poll that's designed specifically to fight voter fraud. And we're putting together what we call voter fraud strike forces of lawyers who are experts in election law as well as cybersecurity experts. And I'm talking special ops guys, former special ops guys, former people in the soft community. A lot of these guys support Donald Trump because they've had access to classified information and seen what Hillary and her cronies have done with our country.
Very proud to announce the introduction of the highest quality InfoWars Biome Defense Probiotic. We wanted to come out with the largest spectrum of high quality known probiotics that have been proven to improve overall digestion and health and detoxification in the body. Biome Defense is an exclusive blend of 50 billion live and active cultures from over 23 different probiotic strains that are known to support digestion and intestinal function. Our researchers are confident that we have been able to develop what will be the leading probiotic on the market. Secure your Biome Defense in ultra strength or regular strength at InfoWarsLife.com today and get started supporting your digestive system naturally. We've been testing this formula for years, but this is the limited first run to the public, so please take advantage of it today. Support your own health and support the InfoWar.